Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at some very fun battles in the Open Great League featuring a very cool yet pretty spicy core breaker, and that is Shadow Gyarados. Now Shadow Gyarados was piloted by Zizwilus to a top 16 finish at this year's World Championships, showing that it does have a place as a core breaker in the current Open Great League meta. I wanted to test it out myself. I don't even think I put together a particularly good team around it and was still able to go 15-8 across the battles that I played with it. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Shadow Gyarados in action in the Open Great League. Hopping into the first match, sending Shadow Gyarados into Annihilate. Due to the counter resist, Shadow Gyarados can do pretty decently here. Of course, it's going to be a very frail Pokemon, so something like a Shadow Ball would easily KO, but if I can call a Night Slash, I'm going to be able to tank that no problems. The Night Slash will connect, Gyarados able to survive, in comes Dugong. I'm going to bank an Aqua Tail for later, because I've seen this team before. Annihilate, Dugong, the third, always going to be Bastiodon. So by putting the Ferrothorn onto the Dugong and saving a Quagsire up a shield in the endgame, this should just be a one game for me. The Power Whip gets shielded, opponent expending both their shields incredibly early in this match. They will fire off the Icy Wind, I'm going to let that through, and now I can connect with a Power Whip. Due to the debuff, it's not going to be enough to knock out. My opponent is going to be able to set up a pretty nice farm down for them as I fall just short of the Mirror Shot. I did consider Thunder, but I really wanted to use Mirror Shot specifically because it does give me extra super effective coverage into the fairies that Gyarados doesn't do great against, and better pacing on top of that. Here, I can't quite get the farm down, so I will cap tie with the Aqua Tail to pick up the knockout. Opponent is going to bring in the Annihilate, and here, arguably, I make a misplay. What I should have done was just snipe with the Aqua Tail. Opponent expected me to go for a snipe with the Aqua Tail, switching a Bastiodon in to try and anticipate that play. They realize they don't have a win con, and they resign the match. Nightmare lead in the next match, leading Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Magnezone. I safe switch into the Quagsire, met with Poliwrath, and everything that can go wrong is going wrong. Absolute nightmare lead and swap. My opponent doesn't throw their Icy Wind, which is a misplay. This allows me to bluff a Stone Edge and force a shield. They should be Icy Winding here any minute, but the opponent makes a crucial error. They commit to the farm down. I make the Stone Edge. Stone Edge would get them very low. They shield, and here they thought that the counter had KO'd me. They wanted to Icy the Gyarados instantly, but I actually lived it on 1 HP. That's about as unfortunate of a mid-game as you could get from an opponent. That is really, really rough. I'm going to be able to get a nice farm down. I'm not going to be able to make a crunch, and I'm debuffed, so I'm going to save the energy and then bring in Ferrothorn. I'm up 2 shields. They're always going to Mirror Shot bait, so I am going to call it. It is the Mirror Shot in the back, is Annihilate. I've been fully hard countered here. There is no way that I should ever win this game, but due to my opponent misplaying in the mid-game, I now have a chance. I'm going to be able to make it to the Power Whip. This will pick up the KO, and my opponent is going to try and win based on fast move pressure. I have to see how much damage the Volt Switch will do. I'm not going to live a third Volt Switch, so I'm forced to go for the Mirror Shot. The only way I survive it is if the Mirror Shot debuffs, and the Mirror Shot does debuff, and now I have to hope. Can a Crunch KO here? Can we escape being triple hard countered? Crunch picks up the knockout, and I'm able to take the win. Unfortunately, the leads are not getting easier, as in the next match, I lead Shadow Gyarados into a Whimsicott. I am completely walled here, and I can't even switch out because I have the Quag in the back. If they have Grass Knot, this probably just KOs me, but most should be running Seed Bomb, so I let it through. That does so much damage. Oh my goodness. But I'm able to hang on and make it to the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail, even though it's resisted, will do a lot. Shadow Gyarados hits incredibly hard. It's very, very frail, but it outputs monster damage. The Aqua Tail will connect, and I almost win the zeros as the Shadow Gyarados. They do exit with the Moonblast. Moonblast is going to connect, and I'm going to get a farm down. In comes Typhlosion. That's terrible. I bring in the Quagsire. Quick switch from the opponent into Feraligatr, and this becomes a deeply unfun game of bait calls versus full sending. This is a really tough call to make. I decide to go for the bait here, expecting that they do not want this against the Typhlosion, and the opponent ends up making the game-winning call. They call the bait, and I just don't see a win con at this point. I'm going to fire off this Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is no shielded. Wait, they're saving 2 shields for Typhlosion. Typhlosion now has a Thunder Punch. I'm going to make the call that they're not going to throw right away. So I'm going to stay in and fire off this Aqua Tail. They now have a Blast Burn. I'm again going to make the read. They're going to do one more and Thunder Punch. I switch. I get the catch of the Thunder Punch, and this game is a win. But they anticipate it. They go for the Blast Burn, but the Quagsire still hangs on to make the Aqua Tail. That game felt lost the moment it was no-shielded, but with a couple correct reads, we claw back and take the win. Nightmare lead again in the next match. Shadow Gyarados into Bastiodon. Normally I'd always safe switch the Quagsire, but Bastiodon almost always has Victory Bell. So instead, I'm going to bring the Ferrothorn, because their best response to a Ferrothorn is probably the Basti, and if I can stay and burn Switch Clock, then hopefully I can do okay here. My opponent tries for a Power Whip catch onto their Dragonair. They are unsuccessful, and now I get to start spamming out Mirror Shots, and I get a bit of good luck. The first Mirror Shot actually gets the attack drop. Dragonair is completely walled here. Their options are Body Slam, Aqua Tail. Neither move is going to be doing much damage. The Switch Clocks are very misaligned, and I can take advantage of that. I bring in the Gyarados. These Dragon Breaths shred through that Dragonair, and now I have the potential to reach Aqua Tails versus the Bastiodon. They bring out Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff, the question will be, if the next Charm KOs, I can't make another Aqua Tail. But if I survive it, I can get there, and I do. I force the shield with the first, I make a second, and look at this damage, by the way. That's a lot of damage onto that Wigglytuff, and now this game somehow looks winnable. I still have the Quag in the back. I'm going to full send the Power Whip. It does more damage than a Mirror Shot. Mirror Shot's a very terrible move. I'm able to force the shield from the opponent, and now I just have a completely winning endgame as long as I save the shield for the Quag. So I can bring in the Quag, go for the Aqua Tail right away. Wigglytuff will get KO'd, and that's game over. I led Shadow Gyarados into a Bastiodon plus Wigglytuff core, and somehow again we pull off an improbable victory. Our string of bad leads finally comes to an end as I lead Shadow Gyarados into Mantine. Mantine, they don't commit to an Ice Beam, which means I can confidently no-shield here. Aerial Ace does a lot, but it is survivable, and now I can fire back with the Crunch. This will hit for massive damage. Opponent is going to commit the shield. It looks like I should be able to make at least an Aqua Tail. Opponent does not want to let that happen. And I've got through most of their HP purely just off fast moves. I bring in Ferrothorn, they pivot into the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. And if that's any indication, then I don't think my Ferrothorn's going to have a ton of play in the back. They go for the Ice Punch. I know an Aqua Tail won't KO, so I'm forced to go for the Stone Edge and hope that this is going to be enough to knock out, and the Stone Edge just does enough to pick up the KO. Are they going to be bringing back in the Mantine, or will we see their final Pokemon? They bring out Annihilate. Annihilate gets the one-turn bring-in. It's not going to affect things too much, as I would make a move either way. It's just going to be the difference of one extra Mud Shot. But in reality, that's not going to be a huge difference maker. This isn't enough for a Shadow Ball or a close combat, so I am going to let that through. It's just a Night Slash, and now, here's where opponents not knowing movesets can be helpful, because almost no Ferrothorns run Mirror Shot, so they wouldn't be expecting a Mirror Shot bait, but they get a beautiful catch, and now I'm on the back foot. I have to go for the Undercharge. I get the Undercharge. If I can Bullet Seed down, I can win this game, and it's the perfect Undercharge. Ferrothorn leaving with a fraction of HP left, but the Power Whip loaded, KOing that Annihilate, and we get the 2 Shield Flex as well. We move to the next match, Shadow Gyarados versus Charjabug. Another terrible lead. Opponent not switching out, so I may as well fire off the Aqua Tail and look to get some damage onto the Charjabug. This is going to put it into a more manageable range for my Ferrothorn later on. They will go for the X-Scissor. In comes Azumarill. Azumarill, a Pokemon that this team is pretty weak to. Obviously, Gyarados not going to do well against it. Quagsire soft loses that matchup. So overall, not an amazing spot to be in. Opponent will be connecting with their Ice Beam just to pick up the KO, as that is their cheapest charge move. But now I'm going to bring in Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn getting sent in here right away. Opponent is going to end up losing charge attack priority to the Ferrothorn, and Power Whip will come close to knocking out, and it's just enough damage to do so. In comes Charjabug. The fact that they brought in Charjabug here tells me that they're weak to Ferrothorn in the back, and that's good news for me, because I really need Ferrothorn to Core Break, considering that I led Shadow Gyarados into an Electric type. Shadow Gyarados I do think is a very cool meta Core Breaker. I was just seeing a lot of very difficult leads for it, which did make it a little bit challenging. The fact that they shielded, I'm definitely shielding back here. Absolutely, without a doubt. And they're demonstrating very good charge attack timing by throwing 2 Volt Switches in the move. I fire off the Power Whip. Power Whip can't quite KO. It's Feraligatr. And again, I'm gonna be a little mean. I'm gonna go for the Mirror Shot bait. I get the shield from the opponent, and now I have a choice to make. Do I shield and Power Whip? I decide no. I decide I'm just gonna farm down with the Gyarados and win that way. I should be good. This is just a Hydro Cannon to just farm down and take the win. But here's where I actually overestimate the bulk on the Shadow Gyarados, and I get farmed down with 1 HP on the Gator. I think if I just shielded the Ferrothorn and then aggressively switched into the Gyarados, I could have been fine. But unfortunately, I underestimated how much damage the Hydro Cannon would do and overestimated the bulk, and I end up paying the price. As we move to the next match, Gyarados proves to be a great core breaker for their Shadow Dragonair Skarmory core. I end up getting some nice damage on it with the Aqua Tail and bring in Quag because I know that I can tank a Brave Bird and still make 2 Aqua Tails to force either switch or both shields. The fact that they're double shielding tells me they're going to have a really good counter to Gyarados in the back. Oftentimes Dragonair is paired with Lantern with Spark, and in that case, it's very fine. If it's Water Gun Lantern, then of course, Gyarados is going to destroy that thing, but odds are it's probably on Spark, and if it is, then Ferrothorn should just be in a good position to sweep. So, I'm going to get a nice farm. It is going to be the Spark Lantern, so I get to bring in the Ferrothorn. They bring in the Dragonair, and again, this is a position where Mirror Shot is going to be able to put in some pretty nice work. Just continually spamming out the Mirror Shots, fishing for those debuffs, as the opponent will spam off Body Slam after Body Slam. Dragonair actually ends up going for Aqua Tail here. Aqua Tail, there's not much of a difference. I believe Body Slam does 1 more damage per, so them going for it's not going to make a huge difference in this game. They try and go for a Cap Tie, but I was just looking to farm since I got the debuff, so I will happily take the free energy, and now I can fire off this Mirror Shot. Mirror Shot into the Dragonair is not quite going to be able to pick up the KO, but they're forced to switch back in the Lantern. I can connect with a Power Whip, switch into Gyarados, and Gyarados gets its revenge for all the electric types I've seen today as Crunch KOs the Lantern. We Dragon Breath down that Dragonair and take the win. Moving to the next match, Lantern's back for revenge, but it's Water Gun. I should have checked the fast move. That's 100% my fault. I should have stayed in, because if it's Water Gun, Shadow Gyarados actually destroys that thing. Like in the 2s, it is not a fun time to be the Water Gun Lantern. But I end up safe switching into the Quag, and I'm met with my opponent sending in their Lickitung. Lickitung takes an Aqua Tail and a Stone Edge, so I'm very okay with just letting this go. They full send the Power Whip, but this is going to get energy on the Gyarados. Unfortunately, my opponent gets the new mechanic, or damage registration error, whatever you call it, but the Body Slam is going to take priority over that Dragon Breath KOing, which is really unfortunate. They don't send in the Lantern. Instead, they bring in Wigglytuff, and Lantern Wigglytuff has a very big core breaker, and its name is Ferrothorn. They're going to bring in that Water Gun Lantern, and I'm going to start spamming out Power Whips. After I land it, then I can start firing off Mirror Shots, and they actually end up no-shielding. So I'm just going to build up, and then just start going for Mirror Shot baits. It's double resisted due to the Water Electric typing, but at this point, their only win con in the game is landing damage with this Lantern. They know this is only a Mirror Shot. It's double resisted. It's not going to KO. I'm just fishing for debuffs at this point. They're going to be able to make one final charge attack, but a Thunderbolt is not going to threaten Ferrothorn whatsoever. In comes the Wigglytuff, and the opponent will resign the match. Shadow Gyarados versus Shadow Alolan Sandslash. That is a core breaker. Oh my goodness. I'm going to be sending in the Quag, and my opponent responds with Altaria. Not a typical response to a Quag save switch, as Quag up energy can be quite threatening to the Altaria. Altaria going to be firing off the Sky Attack. I won't be able to make another Stone Edge if I let it go, so I am going to end up shielding. I overfarm quite a bit, and I'm going to full send another Stone Edge. Stone Edge doesn't KO, but it does a lot. They end up double shielding in this matchup, and I make a last second Stone Edge. That is absolutely huge. This Stone Edge will connect. As we see, it doesn't KO, but the switch timer's up, so I can bring in the Gyarados. I'm going to shield and then look for a full farm down. Opponent not going to let that happen. They bring in the Sand Slash, but an Ice Punch not going to KO. It is something that I can survive. Not super easily, as again, Shadow Gyarados is very glassy. I'm actually able to make it to a Crunch there. Crunch is going to do slightly more damage, and it's going to put that Sand Slash in potential farm down range for the Ferrothorn. I have Ferrothorn, and I have quite literally 1 HP on a Quagsire for a potential catch. They're going to make a move. I have no shield, so I just have to tank this damage. It will be the harder hitting drill run, and I'm going to get the bullet seed farm down. If the opponent threw on better timing, they may have been able to get a second move there. So, a little bit of a mistake on their part. In the back, it is a Azumarill, and this game is a win. All I have to do is avoid a catch. But wait, Power Whip does not two-shot. I'm going to farm up. They try for the catch onto Altaria. They are unsuccessful, and they are one away from making it to the Ice Beam. So, to play it safe, I throw one, and I catch on the 1 HP Quagsire. Absolutely back-breaking catch there. And now I can farm up to a Power Whip plus a Mirror Shot. So if the Power Whip doesn't KO, I have a Mirror Shot after. But with a couple extra Bullet Seeds, the Power Whip is able to secure the knockout and take the win. Hopping into the final match, and we see a good lead. It's been so long, I forgot what those looked like. Leading into the Whiscash, opponent is going to send in Sableye. Sableye going to be hit with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail does get shielded. It looks like that I can actually just win the 2s by fully Dragon Breathing down here. Granted, I haven't really been seeing the cores that I was trying to target with the Gyarados, but Gyarados has still been able to put in work despite the miserable leads that I've encountered. But yeah, they double shield. I'm just going to double shield and farm down because I can put the Whiscash onto the Ferrothorn. Anytime you run into a Whiscash lead, this should just be a free win. In comes the Deoxys. I didn't think that I could live another counter to make it to a crunch, but as it turns out, I actually did live it, so I think I may have been able to get there. But this is a win either way. There's Psycho Boost and dipping, so I can just queue up the switch into the Ferrothorn here. In comes the Whiscash. In comes the Ferrothorn. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Overall, I had a lot of fun with this team. As I mentioned at the start, this is a spicier team, so it's not necessarily a team that I recommend for climbing. I did have some very good sets with it. I mentioned I went, I think, 15 and 8 across the battles that I played with it. There was one game where I ended up paid actoring someone, so I had the game won, and then I top left it. I didn't count that in the record. And there's another game where it accidentally gave me an auto-rec team, which, obviously, since I wasn't running the team, I didn't include that in the record either. But yeah, Shadow Gyarados, I think is a very interesting core breaker. And big congratulations to Aziz Wireless for making it to top 16 at the World Championships with Shadow Gyarados. Definitely like seeing when people are able to think outside the box and find some unorthodox core breakers that are able to have some nice play. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.